Gulliver works in the mailroom of a New York newspaper, stuck in a dead-end job.
God dang it.
He had a crush on Darcy, the travel editor. Darcy was smart, driven, and way out of his league. Gulliver flirted awkwardly, too shy to ask her out. His buddy Dan, the tech guy, pushed him to step up. One day, Gulliver faked his way into a travel writing gig. He pitched a trip to the Bermuda Triangle. Pure bluff. Darcy, impressed, sent him off. Gulliver was thrilled and terrified. Out at sea, his boat hit a freak storm. Waves tossed him like a toy. He washed up on a strange shore, unconscious. When Gulliver woke up, he found himself tied down by countless tiny people. They were the citizens of Lilliput, a miniature island nation. They built wooden frames around Gulliver, reinforcing the ropes continuously. A tiny man named General Edward stepped up, ordering Gulliver to submit to his army. But startled Gulliver simply pulled gently, snapping the ropes like threads. Chaos erupted instantly. Tiny people went flying everywhere, holding tight to their ropes. Just when Gulliver thought he must be dreaming, Edward charged in riding a horse. He hurled a spear, piercing Gulliver's foot. Gulliver cried out in pain, lifting his foot instinctively. The other tiny people seized the moment, throwing ropes around his pants from behind. With Edward's command, they all pulled hard together, dragging Gulliver back to the ground. Between panic and the sudden fall, Gulliver passed out again. When he woke up next, he was already loaded onto a cart, headed for the palace. Residents crowded around to stare in awe. Soon, the procession reached the royal palace. On Edward's order, soldiers turned the winches, slowly lifting Gulliver upright. Edward intended to offer Gulliver as a gift to King Theodore, but the king was unimpressed, so Gulliver ended up locked in a seaside prison instead. In this prison, Gulliver met a young man named Horatio. Horatio had feelings for Princess Mary, making him a rival to General Edward, which was why he was imprisoned there too. The next day, Edward put shackles on Gulliver and forced him to plow the fields. But suddenly, the rival nation of Blefuscia launched a surprise attack. They set fires all over the palace and even kidnapped Princess Mary. Edward quickly rushed back with Gulliver. While Edward was distracted, Horatio secretly unlocked Gulliver's control device. Just as the enemy was about to succeed, Gulliver arrived at the princess's tower. He grabbed the two enemy leaders and tossed them straight into the lake. Right after saving Princess Mary, bad news came from King Theodore's palace. The fire had spread out of control, and the soldiers couldn't stop it. Gulliver raced over to help. He reached out to rescue King Theodore, but burned his fingers on the hot window. With the king about to burn alive, Gulliver did the unthinkable. He pulled down his pants and unleashed a massive stream of water. The giant water spray instantly put out the flames. King Theodore survived the disaster.
How dare you evacuate yourself on our great and glorious...
Instead of being angry, he thanked Gulliver for saving everyone. That night, Gulliver was invited to a royal banquet. He took the opportunity to ask the king to pardon Horatio. Then he launched into full brag mode. He claimed to be the president of Manhattan and described himself as a living legend back home. King Theodore was instantly impressed. From that moment on, Gulliver settled into life in Lilliput. One morning, it took 3 men a few hours just to brew him 1 cup of hot coffee. All the construction workers in Lilliput worked together to build Gulliver a luxurious beachfront mansion. Life in Lilliput got better and better for Gulliver, until one night, General Edward brought shocking news. Gulliver's lost boat had been found. Soldiers were already cleaning up the wreckage. One soldier accidentally pulled the tab on a giant soda can and got launched through the air. On the other side of the beach, another group of soldiers was poking around a massive cell phone. The storm-battered boat had finally been recovered. Gulliver was overjoyed, but the happiest person wasn't Gulliver, it was Edward. Because this meant Gulliver might finally leave, and Edward could once again become the king's favorite. Edward promised right then and there that he could fix the boat within a week. After hearing that, Gulliver fell completely silent. Back home, he would go back to being a failed mailroom guy. Here in Lilliput, he had food, comfort, and respect. So he made a decision. He wouldn't go back. King Theodore fully supported this choice. To show his appreciation, he promoted Gulliver to general and demoted Edward to vice-general. That completely pushed Edward over the edge. Angry and jealous, he secretly made a deal with the enemy, Blefuscia. He disabled the kingdom's defense system. Soldiers quickly sounded the alarm. Gulliver heard the noise and ran to the shore. He saw countless enemy warships covering the sea. He took off his shirt and walked straight toward the enemy fleet. Gulliver told the commander on the lead ship that he didn't want to hurt anyone. Maybe they could just fake a battle and call it a day. But the enemy commander wasn't buying it. They surrounded him and fired dozens of cannons at once. The cannonballs tore into him, ripping holes everywhere. But the very next second, all the cannonballs bounced right back, crashing into the enemy fleet and sending them into total panic. Then Gulliver grabbed all the ship anchors and dragged the entire fleet back to Lilliput. After the battle, Gulliver officially became a national hero. People played tabletop soccer with him. and they even started constructing buildings that matched his taste. But on the other side of town, Edward was abandoned by everyone. Princess Mary had fallen in love with Horatio, and finally saw Edward's true colors. Furious, Edward fled to Blefuscia and revealed a carefully designed battle blueprint. One day, Gulliver was giving a street concert as usual. Suddenly the soldiers sounded the alarm again, and this time, the challenger was none other than Edward, the guy who had disappeared for so long. At first, Gulliver wasn't impressed. Edward was riding a giant trash can, but the very next moment, Gulliver realized he was in serious trouble. The trash can instantly transformed into a giant battle suit. Gulliver gave an awkward smile and used all his strength to push the robot, but the robot didn't budge an inch. Seeing this, Gulliver tried to run away, but Edward grabbed him by the pants and lifted him into the air. Right in front of everyone, Edward used Gulliver like a human yo-yo. Faced with Edward's overwhelming power, Gulliver had no choice but to admit to the Lilliputians that he was just the guy from the mailroom, and not the hero he had claimed to be. The moment he said it, the Lilliputians lost all hope and stopped resisting. King Theodore and Princess Mary were locked up, and Gulliver was sent off to the legendary Island of Terror. When Gulliver woke up again, he found himself lying in a fancy dollhouse. He thought he had returned to the real world, but suddenly the entire house started shaking violently. A young girl named Glumdalclitch opened the dollhouse roof. This time, Gulliver was the tiny one. He had landed in Brobdingnag, the land of the giants. Gulliver had lost all motivation. When Glumdalclitch played with him like a doll, he didn't resist. He just accepted it. The next day, Horatio suddenly appeared. He told Gulliver that Blefuscia had captured another giant woman, Darcy, the girl Gulliver had a crush on. Hearing that, Gulliver couldn't sit still any longer. They used a parachute made from the remains of a U.S. Air Force pilot Gulliver had found in the dollhouse and secretly escaped the land of the giants. They snuck into Blefuscia's dungeon and rescued Darcy from her cell. With encouragement from the imprisoned King Theodore and the Queen, Gulliver finally found the courage to confess his true feelings to Darcy. The next day, Gulliver challenged Edward to another duel, this time with the fate of Lilliput on the line. But sadly, the power gap remained huge. Edward had upgraded his robot. He grabbed Gulliver's fist and released a high-voltage shock. Just when things looked hopeless, Horatio rode in on his horse. He tossed a rope onto the robot and climbed into the control chamber. He managed to disable the robot's electric weapon, giving Gulliver a chance. Gulliver launched a finishing move, slammed the robot to the ground, and ripped out the power cables. In the next second, the robot collapsed and turned back into a trash can. After this battle, Horatio was celebrated as a hero for his role in the victory, and finally received King Theodore's permission to court Princess Mary. In a fit of rage, Edward threatened to kill Princess Mary, but she showed her strength by punching him right in the face. At first, King Theodore sentenced all Blefuscians to the gallows and prepared for war, but Gulliver stepped in just in time. He helped make peace between the rival island nations by reciting Edwin Starr's anti-war song, War, reminding everyone how pointless their fighting was. With peace restored and his redemption complete, Gulliver reunited with Darcy. Together, they repaired his boat and sailed back home through the Bermuda Triangle, finally returning to New York City. Back in the real world, Gulliver became a true travel writer and started a romantic relationship with Darcy.